Silversun pickups, Widow's Weed. And that you heard a little snippet of, that's hopefully not as much to get you in trouble. Neon Wound. Been a while since I had to do it the way I used to do it, so you know dang well I was, regardless of what I saw from Rocked, which was the first review I did bother to see, which is why I was so glad that after listening to it, how wrong he was. This album deserves... I'm probably the only other... I'm glad I'm not the only other person who thinks this album does deserve better, than what he gave it. Yeah, this is the 5th studio album, full length. I might have had 2 apiece, but as far as I'm concerned, the only one is Pikel. That's a good EP. If I decide to, since they've got 5 out, I might decide just to further prove my point of how much of a Silversun Pickups fan I am, even though I think I did a Better Nature review. Though I'm not sure if that one's on the Facebook one, that year of the Facebook, the part of the Facebook years, or if that was the very beginning of the channel itself here finally becoming a thing. Either way, look, if you can't find it there, look to my Facebook. We'll link in this description below. Well, for the most part, this band has been known to be the band that, if I hadn't fully tiptoed and dive in properly towards dream pop and shoegaze, this, straight up, for the most part, this was the band that did it. I'm gonna move this over a little bit. Alright, very good. And this album is produced by Butch Vig, of all people. I wonder how long they were waiting around to make sure they got a hold of him to make an album. Because, granted, we're busy with Foo Fighters, which, because of his connections with Dave, and which made absolute sense because of now, having been responsible for, I believe, having produced Nevermind, and the success that grunge had. However, he also was responsible for another album that technically plays a little bit into grunge, but also plays a part a little bit within dream pop and shoegaze to a degree in terms of alternative rock, and that was a band that this band has been compared to, and that was Smashing Pumpkins. More specifically, honestly, personally for me, my favorite of the Pumpkins records, Siamese Dream. So to me, getting Butch Vig was probably the next best thing, aside from possibly getting whoever produced the 2 best albums they've ever done, this band in particular, David Carnivus and Swoon, a good back-to-back fighter, and Swoon being that album that would go past that of the Sophomore Slump. I know that for a fact, because that is still, as far as I'm concerned, their best effort. Spoilers already, going into the possibility of a top 5. So, this album, I was worried a little bit. I liked better. I'll admit, at first, I didn't like Better Nature. I didn't like a Better Nature. Aside from maybe the singles. First one's still a little leery, which was the same thing when it came to Bloody Mary and Nerve Endings. Even the follow-up single was which I guess is fine. It was one of the songs that kind of came around the latter half of that album, which I did like. And I did like that song, but it wasn't as strong as the song that picked things up on that record. Which, if we'll probably get more detail there, because I don't have all of the albums on my hand for me to rely on or be able to tell you out of sheer memory at this point, because it has been a while since I've listened to them entirely. But I know enough to know, through my past listens, to know that last album is possibly considered their worst. Even though that album, though in heavy rotation on radio, having the song Circadian Rhythm, Last Dance, that was probably the best thing when it comes to frontwoman Nicki Manager, or Manager. I'm not sure if I butchered her last name, I'm sorry. But you're a good she's a good bass player. She had some hiccups here and there when it came to her vocal performance, but they worked for what they offered, especially when it came to this one cover off a Pikel LP that I can't remember, and I wouldn't blame anyone else if they didn't either. So don't blame me at all, please. Though she did have a vocal moment, lead-ish, when it came to Little Lover So Polite. She kind of does a little bit here, but more kind of like that of Little Lover So Polite. But you could tell vocally it's similar in ways to the way her lead vocal had come from for that track. Now, that and well, I guess let's say it was fine. But for the most part, the rest of the record was more so, I'd say you could almost say for the most part that their discography could almost be comparable to what happened with Prime Pumpkins. Except I wouldn't really say that Neck of the Woods is even remotely close to being their Melancholy. And no. I mean, there is a slight concept-ish thing, but not really. It's nowhere near touching that in terms of greatness. Plus, their past album, 2 albums have been so great that it just kind of paled in comparison. And it took me a while to understand what they were going for on that, because I didn't know that they were going for that horror thing. And once they finally figured that out, it made more sense. But it only makes the middle track, that is the climax of that album, work. And then going into Better Nature, I was kind of like, I don't know. And it grew on me, though, but I don't know where they were going to go from here. The best thing they could do, I mean, are they really going to tiptoe? And that's what kind of got me worried when going into the lead single of this album, It Doesn't Matter Why. AKA We Just Know, or something of that nature. And hearing that, I didn't even bother to listen to the rest of it. I was so like, even when I got to the claps, I'm like, which you think it wouldn't bother me, given that I almost could have skipped a certain track off of Kono Yoken for Deftones, a band that's also very well known for having relied on using shoegaze and dream pop in their sound, and similarly towards Smashing Pumpkins, as well as post rock, more similar to Radiohead. But this band, I don't even know if they went post rock. I might have been okay with it too. Here, they're clearly more dream pop shoegaze oriented. In fact, they brought back the shoegaze and maybe a little more acoustic stuff. Though the way this comes across, I feel like they wanted to try to bring back that sort of element of their music that, and Neon Moon definitely showcases they're prime back to trying to be more closer to the Carnivus and Swoon. But to me, it comes off more Neck of the Woods and Pike meets Pikel. Especially when it comes so much more to acoustics. However, the one thing I will say is that it's, at least I can say from the moment Neon Moon happens, as you've heard, this album is primed to be what I missed about them. I was worried going into this, and I wound up having more of a blast, but I could tell and understand, especially because there is some mixing issues, and that's not really Butch Vig's fault. He's just producing. It's really more so the way the mix, because compared to past albums, the mix it's more the mix, man. Billy Bush, I don't know if this is your first time, but it doesn't, clearly whatever you might have screwed up here mix-wise, didn't do enough to ruin this album experience for me. Or at least make it worse than Better Nature. Better Nature was more it wasn't even so much mixing or anything, it was more just sonic choices. And it was clearly more polished and clearly more dream pop oriented. They got rid of the shoegaze element, it seems, and they started to become more focused on the more electronic elements. And they didn't seem to rely on acoustic elements all that much either. Or at least they put that more like in the back of the mix, I guess. Here you could tell the acoustics and everything finally comes across a lot more, and it's just moshed up together. Lyrics are kind of good. I don't have a lot of fun. It's like, Neon Moon is definitely probably one of the better songs on here. I will admit I didn't get a chance to properly deep dive into this beforehand. I'm sorry. But I can tell you that they do have fun lyrics here and there, and some lyrics to the point where you understand why genres like bands like Deaf Heaven and Alcest and all those bands that kind of that became of the black and shoegaze that essentially evolved out of ambient black metal or atmospheric black metal for that matter. And why shoegaze and black metal did meld well together, I'm more surprised there hasn't been a death metal band that has decided to, encompass elements of that. Though I would love it if it was more closer to like a melodic death metal, or maybe a death and roll type of band, and then adding stuff like that into it. That would have been cool. I'm just saying. It'd be kind of cool to see something like that happen, Because, let's face it, the title of a genre called death gaze just sounds intriguing, no matter what. Even if you could easily get a fan of Ghost Rider to into that band just off of the fact that they think that this will be like the pen and stare of music or something. I don't know, but yeah, listen, and it's a possibility that maybe Silversun Pickups played a part in possibly influencing them, and it definitely was the band that definitely found a way through the mainstream as being probably the biggest band of both dream pop and shoegaze music, and bringing it more forward into the alternative rock and indie scenes. Well, it's always been part of indie scene, but more so into alternative rock, and relying on Smashing Pumpkins style and Brian Aubert's particular style of vocals that have been compared to a band called Freeman Hanley, if I'm pronouncing it right. I've never really got into their vocals, but his particular vocal style. I have a fun fact I'm going to share with you. My old man, one time, when I was up with him doing work when he was doing work or something, in the middle of a car wash / inspection thing or something for his vehicle while he was up there, Lazy Eye, their classic song, I played. I changed the radio station, and they had played Lazy Eye, and for some reason, my dad goes in the middle of the song, "This is Michael Jackson's song." It's kind of funny. It's not as funny nowadays especially even more so because of the HBO documentary, which I understand if it's not, but, this was back before that, though somewhat after the incidents, but there was no real proof, and nothing really took us out of the music for Michael Jackson at the time. So you understand how at the time, and to some degree now, for me personally, it's still kind of funny. I just wanted to throw that little tidbit out there, give you some personal stuff there. So, but yes, the moment, like I said, with the end, as you heard, they back to prime, back to going back, maybe play it safe a little bit. Seeing Butch Vig producing this. My issue wasn't even production-wise. I could feel like the production felt like classic. In terms of this band, at least at this point, classic Silversun Pickups, man. In that way of Carnivus and stuff. But you could tell but it winds up being more like they leave off more from Neon Wound. It's just not as great a mix and stuff. And all the songs are nice. there's some good bass moments. Straw Man has some good guitars on it too. I understand if some people have some issues and some moments. I would almost want to give it a higher grade of it, something closer to an 8 out of 10. I want to just fucking say, if not for the mix, I almost want to say near masterclass, but not quite masterclass with the horns. But it's barely edging out on horns. It's more of a thumbs up. I can definitely say it's a step up from Better Nature, even if it seems like to some degree maybe they're playing it safe, and even if the mix, it's kind of whatever. It's in comparison to even Neck of the Woods, which is probably part of the reason why I know I could say it's better than it, but whether or not I could say it's better than Neck of the Woods, no. Is this better than your Carnivus, or even Swoon, for that matter? No, it wants to be, and I want to commend them for trying. But it's just not quite there, man. I understand if it's sort of a mixed bag with some people. I understand if you give it more like a 7 out of 10 type of a thing. Maybe even a 6, but it's not worthy of that 5 out of 10. It's not Nickelback level stuff. No, they deserve better than that. This doesn't come off as filler to me. No, it don't. But anyways, guys, Silversun Pickups Widow's Weed. I enjoyed this thing. I definitely say go ahead and check it out and see for yourself. It's the best and only way you'll find out if you like this record more, so or less, than Better Nature. if you almost felt like it took you off board for some reason, the album as a whole, I mean, maybe give it time to grow on you, but to the point where you could, I mean, I probably might have grown out of it by the time I listen to it again, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I know for sure it's not going to be better. That this album feels like a step up. I can tell from Neon Moon, even from listening to Neon Moon, and there hasn't been anything entirely. I mean, there might have been something here and there with Freakazoid, and especially but that's more in the mixing of it. At certain points where it seems like they mixed up the mics between lead and background vocals. But, you know, Don't Know Yet's fine. Strawman's good. Bag of Bones I understand, because that's definitely a nice little dream pop type of song. Widow's Weed's a good step up. Songbirds is classic. And We Are Chameleons feels like definitely a nice little heavier note in a way that's almost like what you get out of the end of Swoon with Laura, but not nearly as good, man. And that song, just lyrically, everything just feels good, and it just works together and flows together. And like I said, brutal songs like Royal We from like when it comes to Swoon is a good example of why it makes sense, why it's such a genre as that works with this. And overall, I liked this album. I still want to come back to it. It's worthy enough of that, you know? It's worthy enough, like, it's not just worth of stream, man, even though, like, for some reason, the way it's done via CD and as opposed to it's how I streamed it via YouTube first before I got to listen to it. It's different. It comes off differently, but it definitely, I think, with the CD way you listen to it, CD, it definitely, past times I've listened to those albums CD wise, mix comes off slightly better, but you could tell in places they made some ideas. Even like Bag of Bones, I think they had a weird opening thing where you get like a nice behind-the-scenes little thing. Simpatico works fine. I mean, I don't feel like there's really any filler on this thing. Overall, they return to form on the shoegaze. It's a little darker, a little more. It's got a little bit back of some of that aggression. And when it hits hard, it does hit hard when it needs to. I feel good because I had a conversation with someone who is a Silversun Pickups fan, and I had even talked about how their last album was, and I didn't like it, doesn't matter why, but I like it a little bit better now, but more in context of the record, as opposed to what it was as a single. So in a way, I almost understand a buddy of mine when it came to the Periphery record, with how he felt about the second single, even though I still disagree with him on that. But through this situation with this album and the particular lead single off of this with It Doesn't Matter Why, I understand that. So there's that, but it works better now, more so in the context, and plus Neon Moon really helps out with that, and the follow-up tracks do enough to kind of, it's not filler, but it definitely fills a void, if anything, that was missing. And I hope that you guys get a chance to check that out. Give this album a chance. Silversun Pickups apparently doesn't get as much love as they should, I think. And I feel like this was a good step back in a better direction. There are some moments that do come off a little bit like the certain things that did work about Better Nature do happen here, but not enough. But it's clearly they're bringing back more the shoegazer style and a little bit more acoustics as well, as opposed to electronics, being more electronic rock. And that's what I feel about that. And definitely, there's still definite use of string arrangements, even more so there. And I could understand this album coming off more closer to being a Machina Gana Machines for their discography. And it's just fine. It's understandable, but I don't know if I would really, I've never really given those follow-up albums a listen to really. So I need to do that at some point. But overall, what did you guys think of the newest Silversun Pickups album, Widow's Weed? It's sort of a tongue twister. Try saying that, the band name and the album name together 5 times fast. Silversun Pickups, Widow's Weed. Yeah, and I already fucked up the first time. So, what did you guys think? Leave a comment below. Let me know. Rock that like button with the rest if you must. Link in the description below for Facebook page. For the Facebook page, hopefully it works. And if you do get there, like and follow me there as well. If you have Facebook, of course. And that's kind of all I've got. I don't really have any other social medias. So, Until next time, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I'll see you all in the next video. And speaking of St. Louis, go Blues. Hopefully by the time post this, finally get to be alive to see us win a Stanley Cup, in my lifetime. That'd be nice. Especially, within the trajectory of having the Cubs freaking win a World Series. Ah! Go Cards. Go Blues. Long live the Newt. And long live Silversun pickups. Please check it out if you hadn't already. As always, guys, keep it random, keep it real, keep it rocking. I'll see you next video. Take care, y'all.